if you had to hang a little sign around your neck of the phrase or the sentence that you say most often each day, what would that sentence be? You don't even necessarily have had to say it out loud, but what is the phrase or the sentence that is running through your mind most often each day? When I was your age, the sentence that would be running through my mind was this: that's not fair. That's not fair. And it definitely didn't stay in my mind. I said it out loud. I noticed all the time when things were not fair, and I was gonna let people know that they were not getting away with it. Okay? Not fair. I'm gonna tell you about it. So I always had trouble with this story from the Bible growing up. It was a parable that Jesus told. It was all about a vineyard. So there was a landowner. He owned a vineyard, and he had a harvest that needed to come in. And so he hired workers in the morning, and he said to the workers, I'm going to pay you this amount to work for the day. And the workers said, okay, that's great. That's good pay. We're going to do it. So as the day went on, the landowner went out and he hired more workers at 12. And then the day went on and he hired more workers at 3. And then the day went on and he hired more workers at 5. And at the end of the day, all of the workers lined up and the landowner paid them, and he paid them all the same. Well, who do you think had a problem with that? The men who had worked all day. They were really upset. That's not fair. So the landowner said, well, hey, why are you upset? You agreed to work for this amount. What do you care? It's my business what I pay to the other workers. I had a hard time with that story. Would you have a hard time with that if that was you? If you had worked all day and somebody who came at 5 got paid the same as you? So this story can be explained as if the landowner was God and that the workers are us. See, God has an uncommon compassion for people. God's always doing for people who are not deserving. And God calls us to be like that too. Now, how could this unfairness maybe show up in your house? Maybe if there is dessert being served and everybody's piece looks this big and your piece you feel like looks this big. Or ice cream scoops, theirs looks this big and yours looks smaller. What about time spent with parents alone? Getting some extra time with your parents. Sometimes your sibling gets more. Or what about when a grown-up tells you that, hey, you're not old enough to do that? You might think, that's not fair. In our house, it mostly shows up in this. This is the Lally family chore chart. It is a masterpiece. It has changed much over the years. We have our daily chores, and we have our weekend chores, and then we have chores that come up whenever it's necessary, like the compost or the trash. And even though it is so detailed, it is not exactly fair. And the reason it is not fair is because some of our kids are better workers than others. So their jobs are done with more care. Some of our kids drag their feet about doing their chores and they need a bunch of prodding to get the work done. There are times where I have heard someone cleaning the litter box and they're saying, hey, there's too many lumps in this box. Somebody didn't clean this box well yesterday. That's not fair. And it's true. Life for kids, it's not fair. And it's also true that life for grown-ups is not fair. Life's not really fair for anyone. And as Christians, we're called to meet that fact. We're called to respond to that fact with grace. We're called to give mercy and kindness towards people and in situations where others are undeserving. We're called to respond with compassion. Because really, it was not fair that Jesus died on the cross when he was doing good work for the world. And it wasn't fair that the disciples had to go out into the world with nothing, and almost all of them were killed for the work that they were doing. That wasn't fair. I never hear anyone tell those stories and mention anything about Jesus or the disciples or anyone in that early church complaining, because complaining just doesn't get you anywhere. Life is always going to be unfair. It is. So it's an important seed to plant in your heart, one of gratitude and thankfulness for what you have, even if the share isn't divided equally all the time. You don't want to get stuck on, that's not fair. Because if you get stuck on that's not fair, you're going to miss a lot of opportunities to do good work in the world. You need to focus on growing your love for God and growing your love for God's people so that you can get out there and spread that message to others. So if I had to have a new sign to hang around my neck, it would be this one. I choose grace. I choose grace for myself, and I choose grace for others. And it takes practice, like learning how to play the piano. Just ask anyone that plays. It takes a lot of time, and it's every day. The more you do it, the easier it becomes, and your body just knows what to do. So the next time that there is ice cream being served up in your house, and your scoop looks a little shy of what everyone else is getting, see if you can let it go. Because that's the first step, those little opportunities where you might think in your mind, that's not fair, and you just choose to let it go. Practice that this week and in the coming weeks, because there's plenty of things around us that are not fair, but we want to put love out into the world. So let's have a moment together in prayer. Whew. Gracious God, help us through this time when things seem all amok and there's plenty of things happening in the world that just don't seem fair to each of us. Help us to respond with kindness and compassion and mercy and grace towards others. In your name, amen.